Hello, everybody. Welcome back. This is another Roma Press live stream. Thank you for being here with me as we approach finally the last game of the season, where Roma will play against Empoli. Roma obviously have secured sixth place, and we will get to the hottest, probably discussion topic, which I don't really see as that interesting because perhaps for the first time in a long while, something is out of Roma's hands, and I don't necessarily know how to feel about it. We are talking about obviously Roma potentially getting Champions League football or potentially not getting Champions League football, as it depends on a number of factors. The main one, obviously, being Atalanta staying fifth in the league table. And obviously, as we all know, Atalanta yesterday lifted the Europa League trophy. And I must say, it was painful as a Roma fan to be reminded of what it feels like to be in a Europa League final. And given what happened in Budapest, it was pretty traumatizing to relive it. Obviously, with Atalanta lifting the trophy, that was a different ending than the one we had been subjected to a year ago. I wanted to welcome everybody as we are gonna get started with this live stream. I wanted to just sort of outline a few topics. Obviously, we will discuss this much talked about Champions League qualification. You know what we're talking about, what it means for Roma, what can be the consequences of not qualifying for Champions League after all. We will also mention the latest news regarding Roma's sporting director. Well, not really sporting director, as the official title says, technical director Florent Ghisolfi. And we will obviously also just briefly talk about Empoli, what awaits us in Tuscany, as Roma prepare to play the last match of the season, and then oddly enough, they'll be back on the pitch in Perth, Australia, a few days later. So that's quite the turnaround. I think we've seen that from Newcastle United and Tottenham, who also went to Australia right after the Premier League season came to an end. So this is modern day football. And obviously, we have a lot of listeners and patrons in Australia. So hopefully, they'll get their fair share of Roma. So, hello, everybody. I'll be reading the comments as we go on. So please, if you have any questions, any remarks that you want me to mention, any talking points, feel free to write it in the chat. Let's keep it civilized and let's have fun. I wanted to obviously thank all the patrons who support us, and there's plenty of them today here. If you're not a patron yet, but you would like to support Roma Press, please go to patreon.com/Roma Press, and you can select any plan you want, and that helps us a lot in the long run. We really appreciate it. So, ciao ragazzi, can we talk about everybody getting their hopes up that we will now qualify for the Champions League? That is the question. Everybody yesterday, in the at least in the patron group chat on WhatsApp, initially there was a bit of reluctance, but as Atalanta got going, it seemed like everybody was on board to cheer for Atalanta. Now, in Rome, I would believe that a lot of fans, a lot of local fans, do not feel the same way. There is a very heated rivalry between Bergamo and and Rome, and there, obviously the famous slogan is "Odio Bergamo." So that's "I hate Bergamo" is all you need to know about sort of the tension that is there between the two clubs. As we look at these standings, as we look at what this could potentially mean for Roma, uh, it's inevitable that the first step, obviously, to dream was for Atalanta to get the Europa League trophy. They did so. They did so. They did it in spectacular fashion. They beat the most difficult team in Europe, the team that everybody seemed to be afraid of, a team that swallowed their opponents. And Atalanta uh, just showed up as they did against Sporting, as they did against Liverpool, fearless. And that's really what counts. So we got that out of the way, seeing Atalanta and obviously Giampiero Gasperini rocking his jeans like a casual Friday look, lifting a Europa League trophy. That was not a sight that John and I had anticipated, nor did we look forward to. It's unfortunately the sight that we were subjected to. Unfortunately, we say it from this personal point of view because, as I mentioned, it was the first requirement. Now, what happens next will obviously dictate the seeing Roma in next year's Champions League football. Hi, Andy. I don't think Bologna, Atalanta, and Juve would want to give Roma a financial boost by allowing them to participate in the Champions League. Mazin wisely says, "Ciao, Andy, wavy. Were you also disgusted by Gasperini wearing jeans, lifting the trophy like John was?" Absolutely. Gasperini looked like my boss in the bank that I worked at for a year or two. And I had this guy walking into the office every Friday trying to rock the same jeans that he had rocked when he was 30. The problem was that he was 67 at this time, so the effect was not the same. I believe Gasperini is also around that age. Not a good look, especially when you're lifting a trophy, but who cares? The important thing was Gasperini absolutely schooled Xabi Alonso. Buongiorno, Andy. Hey, Jack Mackland. Hey, Andy, what's the read on the new structure Ghisolfi is planning to set up at Roma? And is there some truth to Scarface joining us? Can you please update, at least give me a hint about who Scarface is? Because there's so many rumors that I've been trying to catch up on lately that it's been, if you mean Burdisso, there is not much going on with Burdisso, at least from the credible sources. Burdisso is not the kind of profile that Roma would like to add, because the thing with Ghisolfi, and I was meaning to get to it later on, as Roma obviously announced Ghisolfi a few days ago, well, yesterday actually. The official title of Ghisolfi will be technical director. Technical director, as explained by Filippo Biafora, our good friend and a trusted reporter. The term technical director in this case is used because CEO Lina Suluku is also in charge of the sporting area. Roma are not looking to add someone else with that title. They're not looking to add someone like Burdisso. What they're looking to do at this time around is to promote head scout Joseph Fontes to a more a more prominent role, especially in negotiations, and also allow Ghisolfi to bring in some collaborators from Nice, which will obviously not only help in the scouting and in the transfers of the first team, but also as a direct link with the Primavera and as specialists in the transfer market that concerns the Primavera. That will be an area that Roma want to focus on, creating this sort of harmony between Primavera and the first team, which we may have lost along the way in recent years, and which Roma want to get back to. I think we can all agree, sort of the level of the Primavera dropped significantly in the last few years. Roma have been relying less on those talents. Those talents have been more involved in obviously business transactions such as Volpato, Missori, and so on. What Roma want to do now is to create a closer bond between the transfer market of the Primavera and the transfer market of the first team. That's why also Ghisolfi's title is technical director, because CEO Lina Suluku is also part of the team that oversees the sporting area of the club. So I do not believe that Burdisso will join, just because he would be downgrading. He's leaving Fiorentina, where he was technical director, And if he's moving anywhere else, he's moving to a destination that is ready to offer him a central role in a project. And I do not believe that this is what Roma are trying to do now. At least these are things that I'm basing on what Filippo Biafora has said numerous times. He does not see Roma adding someone with that sort of profile. They're looking more for people behind the scenes, close collaborators, scouts. That's what Ghisolfi wants to do. He wants to set up a proper scouting network and also have it work both for the Primavera and the first team. I think between Atalanta hating us, Gasperini playing his best friend Juric, who is already leaving Torino and doesn't care about the result, and Motta probably doing favors for Juve, we have no hope. Yeah, guys, that's the wonderful thing about the situation we're in right now. We This is out of our hands. As in, all season long, Roma were backed into a corner where it was up to them to show up and take matters into their own hands. And sometimes it works, sometimes it did not. What happens now is not within Roma's reach. This is Roma have secured sixth place. That's all they had to do. They will play against Empoli. Empoli will be desperately looking to avoid relegation. They're in a terrible situation and they need to stay up. But as you guys mentioned, we are basically relying on our direct competition to help us. Because you know what it means when you qualify for Champions League football? It means you, as Roma, are guaranteed 55 million euros in earnings just from the qualification. That's a huge boost. That's a huge financial boost for a team like Roma that has been deprived of Champions League football for 6 years now, 6 seasons, 5 years, whatever, same thing. And they are looking to get back in it, get back to a certain competitive level that they've missed out on, that they've lacked, obviously, because of limited resources, because of financial fair play. What the Champions League would do to you would be a boost, not only in visibility and brand, which is something that the Friedkins deeply care about, and they're trying to work towards, which explains obviously this match, this friendly game in Australia against Milan, but also the financial capabilities for the summer and what Roma will be able to do. That's a huge difference maker right there. 55 million as opposed to what Roma are going to earn from their Europa League run this year, which is about 20 million. So we're talking about a lot of money, guys. I just wanted to briefly mention if we have a nice group of people here. I'm still counting on more comments to come along. But guys, if you could just please click a like, give us a thumbs up on this live stream so that more people can join as we move along. So obviously we have a lot of things that need to go right. First of all, Atalanta must remain fifth. For that to happen, we have to have Torino show up. We have to have Juve show up. We have to have Bologna show up. These are things that have to happen, and also for Atalanta, obviously, to still be hangover from last night's celebrations. Now, obviously, in the Italian media landscape, there is this video circulating online of Gianluca Scamacca, who is filming himself with his phone, and I think he was doing an Instagram live video, and when someone reminded him, there's still 2 more league games left, he just looked at their team and it was like, come on, like, seriously, like, we're, and the whole discourse now is, are Atalanta going to do Roma a favor? And my question is exactly like yours. Why would they ever help out an opponent that, if you help Roma out in this situation right now, with Daniele De Rossi getting a fresh start, with Paulo Dybala's future at Roma on the line, because I think a lot depends on this Champions League qualification, with someone like Florent Ghisolfi coming in hot, coming in from 2 very impressive experiences at Lens and at Nice. We're talking about a Roma that is trying to get back on its feet. Why, if you are Atalanta, you just won the Europa League trophy, you just qualified for next year's Champions League, why would you help a direct opponent? I can't envision a world where that happens. I've been trying to be the glass half full guy on the podcast over the recent weeks, but this, to me, is a scenario that I have not encountered yet in my experience as a Serie A fan. Good afternoon, Anthony, our good patron. We are days away from the most up and down season in recent memory, which is a lot from ending. Oh, obviously, Anthony, this has been a remarkable season, just because of how much stuff has happened, how much stuff could have had still happened, and how much stuff did not happen after all. Considering our elimination from the Coppa Italia, which was shameful, and still sort of it baffles me as to how exactly that happened, how you managed to lose to a Lazio side in those circumstances, the way it happened, the way we've been eliminated from Europa League, which was painful. It was sad. It was ironic that we were eliminated by the team that we eliminated in that same stage last year, and that elimination obviously caused a lot of upset and a lot of anger and sadness among Xabi Alonso and his men, and sort of, in hindsight, perhaps motivated their run, this historical run this season. What happened with Jose Mourinho, what happened with Daniele De Rossi, out of all people, joining Roma. So we will discuss all of this later on in much more detail with John when we do sort of a summary of the season. We will share our favorite moments. I already got one on my mind for the season. I'm not the only one, I think, who looks back on that penalty shootout with Feyenoord as this incredible turning point for better or worse, right? Because it's what gave us hope. It's what gave us hope. I think, this wonderful live stream, as always, is a beautiful place to get people from all over the world together commenting at once. What ties us all together is that hope. It's the hope that Roma keeps giving us and taking back. And I think the one moment where we all felt that hope re-enter our spirits was when we got through the penalty shootout against Feyenoord with De Rossi, a situation where we thought, well, he coached Spal. What does he know about European football? And then all of a sudden, out of nothing, this Roma team rises from the ruins. Yes, I'm quoting the great Peter Drury. Rises from the ruins and manages to go through, and that's the moment that I look back on with most fondness, because it hinted at the potential of the team. It hinted at what could have been had we been more consistent, had we been more focused, had there been less injuries, had we been actually playing real football instead of this, amalgamation of individual mistakes that was, for the most part, the first part of the season. So that definitely is my game to think back on. When I think of this season, I think I will look at that game and at the game that preceded it, obviously, which was the loss to Milan, which marked the end of the Jose Mourinho era, which was a really, really deflating match. I'd be curious, actually, exactly as we're talking about here, this sort of season coming to an end, guys. Please, and I mean this, give me your favorite moment of the season and your worst moment of the season. I think, obviously, worst moment, there is a lot. It's been a difficult season, but I'm really curious to see where people felt the best during this long and arduous season. There is a lot of moments to pick out on, and as kind of like last season, where the season comes down to two halves. It's interesting to consider how many things have happened since August of last year. Melbourne, Australia. There we go. We got a lot of people from down under. We got Amazing Vincent. If we get Champions League, do you think Roma will purchase Lukaku? honestly, even with Champions League football, I wouldn't see that happening. I know there is, and there continues to be talk of it. Not even reported it because Il Tempo reported, and I like Il Tempo. I think that's one of the more trustworthy sources in Italian sports news. The idea is that, for lack of alternatives, for lack of potential buyers, Chelsea may choose to renew Romelu Lukaku's loan at Roma. Obviously, Chelsea want to find a permanent buyer for Lukaku, but it doesn't seem that way. It seems like Lukaku does not have that reputation at the moment. Now, whatever happens, happens. I just do not see Roma spending over 40 million euros on a 31-year-old striker. As good as Lukaku has been, because mind you, guys, I think this is also something that we can talk about, since Lukaku will not play tomorrow. He's been suspended. So well, not tomorrow. See, I get too far ahead. On Sunday, obviously, I know. Lukaku will not be available against Empoli. He got that yellow card when he scored the winner against Genoa, which means that Genoa could have been his last game for Roma. Now, Lukaku, as opposed to a lot of other players who came in with that sort of air of prestige, I think of Thomas Vermaelen, that kind of player, the kind of player that everybody's like, oh, he used to be huge, he used to be a huge deal. Wow, let's see what he has in him. A lot of people think of Ashley Cole. Lukaku, for a player whose arrival, had people swarming the airport. I think all in all, with the consideration to be made that he went from being a focal point for Jose Mourinho to having to adapt to Daniele De Rossi, who by himself was trying to figure out ways to make Lukaku compatible with his playing style. I think all in all, Lukaku has had a really impressive season. I believe he's had over 20 goals. Was it 20 goals, 5 assists? He's been really trying to contribute, even in moments where Roma were dire, absolutely dire, and so sterile sometimes that it was painful to watch. I still think Lukaku came through, based on the fact that you got him on the last day of the transfer window. I think he still came through. Could have been better in certain big games, especially against this former side Inter. That comes to mind. But all in all, it's been encouraging. I just do not see Roma going out of their way and saying, you know what, we're gonna give you out of the blue for a single player. I just do not see that happening. I do not see Roma making that sort of commitment for a player of this kind at this moment in time, even with Champions League. Like the elk mount behind you, and yeah, it's not a really great elk. I think somebody found it. I'm not sure where it came from, but no, I did not take it down myself. I think it was found in some of the woods here in the area in northern Germany. Do you think Daniele De Rossi will use Eldor Shomurodov as a fast-paced winger next season, given our lack of pace and lack of funds to buy many new players? Yes, sir. That's a fair question. Although I do not believe that Shomurodov fits the profile that De Rossi would like to use at this moment in time, and also I doubt that Shomurodov wants to stay at Roma. It's been made clear to him that he's not going to have a central role at the club, unlike what he initially thought was going to be the case when he first came in 2021. Remember, he's brought in as one of the first signings under Jose Mourinho, with the hope of actually being the starting partner to Edin Dzeko. That does not happen. It does not materialize. Edin Dzeko is gone a week later. Shomurodov never has the chance to play with him, and Tammy Abraham is brought in, and Roma changed their entire system, and Shomurodov ends up on the bench. Following his loan spell at Spezia and now at Cagliari, where he did okay, but Spezia are not sold on buying him for 10 million. That's not gonna happen. He's coming back, and I think the next destination is somewhere else on a permanent deal. Would a Champions League qualification change anything on the front of Nandes Diakite? Well, Nandes, uh, and I'm going by what's been reported latest on the website. Nandes is from Cagliari, is in talks to join on a free transfer as the to replace directly Renato Sanchez, who is expected to leave Roma and go back to PSG. Obviously, Renato Sanchez is not even training with the team anymore. He's supposedly fatigued, but he's been out of training for over a week now. He's not going to be called up for Empoli. That's very likely. So Renato Sanchez might as well be on an airplane back to Paris. And then who knows? Roma will obviously not sign him. Nandes, who had been linked with Roma, I think 2 or 3 years ago, is a specific request made by Daniele De Rossi just because he is sort of the box to box midfielder who's meant to provide depth. He's meant to provide depth. He's supposed to be the guy off the bench who does the things that neither Houssem Aouar nor Renato Sanchez have been able to show this season, and which left, I think, De Rossi a bit sour. I think De Rossi was, if there's someone that De Rossi was disappointed in, that's definitely Sanchez and Houssem Aouar. Not only for their fitness levels, with Sanchez leaving much to be desired, but also just for attitude. I think he expected definitely more from Houssem Aouar, who, unlike Sanchez, is here on a permanent basis. So I do not think Champions League changes anything for Nandes. Nandes is a profile that Roma like. He's a cheap option. He comes on a free. He earns right now 1.5 million euros. So what you could offer him is probably something around two. We'll see how it goes. I think that's a profile that was specifically asked by De Rossi, who knows him from their brief time together at Boca Juniors, and when De Rossi quit in 2019. And I think Diakite, that's from Lille, the fullback. That's another nice option just because of how low cost it could be. Diakite earns less than 500,000 euros, which is surprising. He's had a brilliant season with Paulo Fonseca's team, mainly playing in a 4-3-3 system, can also switch to a center back position. He's a really exciting talent, 23 years old, cool. A really cool player, and I think that's the kind of profile that Roma will definitely try and make the best of in this window, with Florent Ghisolfi obviously knowing much about the French market. Now, the big question will be obviously from a lot of people that have been quite surprised at these news, and I totally understand the fact that we're linked to Jonathan David, this the Canadian attacker for Lille. Great two last seasons with Paulo Fonseca again. Paulo Fonseca, who is likely to be on his way to Milan. So I was rooting for him at Lille. I'm not rooting for him at Milan. Unfortunately, that's not going to happen. With Jonathan David, I really just think for at the moment, we're talking about a talent that is being eyed by half of Europe. Jonathan David has been linked with almost every single team in Europe. In Italy, he's been linked with Napoli and Milan. I Guys, personally, I do not see that happening. The only reason why it's being brought up right now and insistently, and will continue to be brought up, is because Ghisolfi knows the French market, and Roma are on good terms with Lille. Roma have had dealings with Lille over recent years. Obviously, they got Zeki Salik from Lille. They are on very good terms with Alexander Barnabar, the sort of an advisor to Lille. They're on very good terms with him. They've worked together on a number of times, and that's why this is even put out there. Jonathan David is 1 year away from his contract expiring, so Lille will try to move him, but I seriously doubt that Roma could be a destination for him. I would be also happy to be proven otherwise. As much as I hate Atalanta as a club, I can't help but feel that Bergamo as a city deserves some happiness to make up for all the terrible things that happened there during COVID. Sure. Sure. Also, I just want to mention John is the one who says bad stuff about the city. I like Bergamo. The old town is beautiful. The rest is horrible, but the old town is beautiful. Hi, Andy. Do you think we're going to see a lot more of Baldanzi instead of Elcha next season? I don't know if instead of Elcha, I think Baldanzi is being prepped for that big responsibility that will come with replacing Paulo Dybala. Paulo Dybala is supposedly extremely disappointed with not being included in Argentina's squad list for their upcoming friendlies and potentially for the Copa America. And I understand him. He's had a remarkable season. He statistically he had a much better season than last year. More goals, more assists, more minutes played. So that's a huge disappointment. That's something that I think could factor into his decision making in the summer. As we know, Paulo Dybala has the release clause that is valid in his contract. It's valid and it's worth around 12 million euros. It applies to clubs outside of Italy, and it will be valid until the end of July. So that's something we have to keep an eye on. I'm not saying that there are teams that have already made offers or whatever, or have made sure that they're gonna sign him. There's been links with Atletico Madrid, with obviously Saudi Arabia. That's been a big mention right there. But I'm just saying, this is a guy who will be turning 31, will be looking to perhaps sign his last big contract in his career as a footballer, which we know is fragile because the guy is injury prone at this point in time. And so we have to consider that Roma may be prepping Tommaso Baldanzi to even start replacing Paulo Dybala on a regular basis from next season onwards. So I think like that. I think El Shaarawy will still continue to be the starter. This is a guy that I think has proven to be very mature this season. If there is a player that I was surprised has not been mentioned, we will then talk about our favorite players of the season. There is going to be mention of Miles VR. There's going to be mention of Evan Dika. All these players that surprised us. Some players that disappointed us. Some players that pleasantly surprised us in the second half of the season, such as Leandro Paredes or Miles VR. Exactly. But I think El Shaarawy has been a very steady presence from beginning to end. And that's very, very nice to see from a player who has been anything but consistent his whole career. And so perhaps that doesn't show in his numbers. And he was the first one to recognize that. Recently he gave out an interview where he was asked to look back on this season. He said, I could have scored more goals. I could have had more assists. But overall, I'm satisfied because I've played a lot of minutes and I've learned a lot of things. And I think that's been key. And that's something that Daniele De Rossi will not decide against next season. I think he will continue relying on Elcha. What is up with financial fair play? How much do money need to how much money do Roma need to raise? Says Morin. Well, financial fair play. Believe it or not, guys, Roma over the last year have been doing really well in terms of the earnings and the whatever came from the partnership sponsorships that the club signed in the last year and a half. That's made a huge difference. Roma have also included in the balance sheets for this year the sale of Roger Ibanez, which will be a huge contribution to this financial fair play constraint, where Roma obviously by the end of June always have to raise an X amount of money. And supposedly this year, Roma, what Corriere dello Sport at least reports is that Roma would be happy just to raise 10 million euros, around 10 million euros. A lot of that money that should have been presented to UEFA, which was initially estimated at 40 to 60 million, these incredible numbers. A lot of that will also come from exactly this Roger Ibanez sale. And then obviously there will be a lot more, but UEFA have become more lenient to Roma because Roma have done an excellent job of respecting all of these, constraints set up by the settlement agreement. Last year, we had Thiago Pinto really working his ass off in terms of sales because he was, after all, able to fulfill all of the requirements and raise the money that needed to be raised. So this year, Roma are looking at a more lenient UEFA. What that means in the long run, we'll have to see because it really depends on window to window how Roma handle themselves. Right now, Roma are doing much better financially, and are able to look towards the summer that could be, more fulfilling. That doesn't mean that Roma will go out of their way to spend 40, 50 million, but they could get some cool deals done along the way. A lot of this, to transfer talk first has to go through the player exits. Roma will definitely prioritize slashing the wage bill, which right now totals around 104 million euros, third highest in Serie A. The Friedkins will want to make that considerably lower, around 10 to 15% lower. This is what the recent reports claim. We'll see how that goes, but even the fact that with Leonardo Spinazzola walking away, Leonardo Spinazzola is one of the most costly players in terms of annual costs. Okay, what you spend on Leonardo Spinazzola in a year is absurd for his contribution, for his injury-prone nature. Then you have Romelu Lukaku walking away, Renato Sanchez, another player that you spend a lot of money on, Rasmus Christensen back to Leeds United. You have Diego Llorente, who I think I'm not sure what the situation is. I think Roma are also not sure. He could stay with Angelino. Those would be the only two players who are on loan here that could potentially stay. But Roma will save a lot of money. Now, then obviously it means they will have to sign other players. They are supposed to sign around 6 to 7 players. There is going to be a lot of attention paid on the wings because, as Daniele De Rossi has said, he wants more players like Gervinho. I love that. He wants more players with pace. He wants more players that are dynamic. He wants more players that give you the kind of advantage someone like Frimpong gave Bayer Leverkusen in the 2 legs against Roma. Obviously, we saw what happened to Frimpong yesterday when he faced Atalanta. It was very satisfying to watching him pout at the end of the game. I don't even know how we can expect to beat Empoli, considering we won't have big Roma, and Dybala is likely out too. At this point, I'm even missing Belotti and Shumarov. It's fine, guys. We are secured 6th place. That's done. It's whatever happens. What matters is what the others do. For once in your life, you can actually say that. What matters is what the others will end up doing. Favorite moment of the season was the comeback against Lecce. Least favorite moments was losing the Coppa Italia match to Lazio. Yes, the game against Lecce with Lukaku's goal was that was definitely a highlight. It was sort of this wonderful series of games that we seem to just completely get the 3 points out of our backsides at the last opportunity. It was a great delusion, I think. I think that was definitely something that gave Mourinho more time on Roma's bench because, as we've mentioned before, Roma seemed intent on sacking Mourinho after the Genoa game where we lost 4-1. Thiago Pinto told the Friedkins, no, wait up. Mourinho is cooking. Mourinho managed to string along this stretch of results that worked in his favor. Obviously, that did not last very long. Best moment, seeing the birth of Sviar as a very top player during the penalties with Feyenoord, and worst moment was seeing Mu crying leaving Trigori after being fired. Uh, I have to agree with Sviar. It's sort of the star making night, right? It happens rarely, at least in a club like Roma, it happens very rarely to see a player have this defining performance. We've talked about this with John. We always go back to the match against Atletico Madrid where Alisson Becker just put on the kind of performance that you talk about in terms of legends, in terms of club legends. And I think Miles VR has done a very nice follow up to that. Perhaps not on that level, but the enthusiasm which he elicited in us at a moment in the season where I think 90% of the people here felt completely hopeless is the stuff that you end up looking back on almost as fondly as a trophy. As in, oh, that's I remember that. I remember where I was when I remember where I was and how I felt when I saw Miles VR complete those two saves. I remember that. I remember that distinctly, and I will always remember where I was where when Alisson Becker was flying everywhere against Diego Simeone's team. Both are nights to remember. Best De Rossi's first match as manager. Oh yeah, with against Hellas Verona, that was quite painful, but it was special. I understand where you're coming from, Vincent. It was special to sort of have this moment of a man that we perhaps expected him to be in that place at some time, just not at that time, and it was happening right before our eyes. Worst moment of the season: Roma's loss against Hellas in the beginning of the season was like shit. Here we go again. Yeah, well, that that initial run is terrible, and whenever we have these runs at the beginning of the season, I always try to tell John, listen, calm down, it's gonna work out. The team needs to get into a flow. But this time around, John was right. The team never got into a flow. Those games at the beginning of the season, Salernitana, Hellas Verona, uh, later on it was Genoa. Those games cost you. They cost you so much, and they ended up costing us a lot because tomorrow, rather, again, not tomorrow, guys, I'm sorry, I'm having a bit of a hangover. On Sunday, Roma will have to rely on others to do well because of that, because they got the first games of the season, the easy games, completely wrong. And it cost them, and they never managed to get back in it. They never managed to recover as we all hoped they would. Favorite moment, Mazin was winning against Brighton 4-0 because of how dominant it was. I absolutely agree. The fact that we expected a tough game. We expected to encounter, this English powerhouse of, tiki-taka football with the Zerbi, and then all of a sudden it's Roma dictating the pace was amazing. Worst was losing to Bayer, conceding 2 goals from stupid, unlucky mistakes. That was painful. That's something we will feel for a long time, I think. Any explanation for Aouar's unremarkable season this year? Any hope he'll rediscover his form next season, or do you think he'll be a bench warmer? I think with Aouar, it's clearly this is a player who is very delicate. He's a player who has immense talent, but as we saw in his time at Lyon, he is also mentally not there all the way. As in, it's very easy to unsettle him. And once he lost his place in the team's lineup, and then once he lost his place in the team's rotation, and then once he went to the Africa Cup of Nations, suffered that great disappointment with Algeria. Even he admitted it. He went back to Trigoria and he was not feeling like himself. So even that caused him to spiral out of Roma's hierarchy. Now that cannot happen to a player that we called upon here because of his technical skills. He has to play. He's a player who definitely benefits from just being given consistent minutes. The problem is not doing enough to warrant those consistent minutes. There were moments where I thought he really showed things that were remarkable. And then in that second half, even the games where he scored, think about the match against Fiorentina, he scores, but To what effect? What else is there besides that goal? And let's not even think about the match against Lecce, where he's just missing chances left and right, completely all over the place. So, on one hand, I want to believe in this player because I really think Wissam War, 25 years old, has a lot to give, and technically he's a remarkable player. I continue to think that from his days at Lyon, he was special. He was really special. The problem is that I do not think this is a player who can be relied on 100% game in, game out right now, and perhaps ever. Perhaps not in this context where you really need to show up. But who knows? With the preseason, with Daniele De Rossi, anything's possible, I guess. Because I do think that Aouar could contribute to De Rossi's formation. Favorite moment, penalty shootout versus Feyenoord? Yeah, we agree on that. Knocking out Milan in Europa, also very satisfying. Worst moment, Rick Karsdorp backspass versus Bayer Leverkusen? Absolutely. It's something that it's something that has disintegrated Karsdorp's time at Roma. Like it's defined Karsdorp's time as a player at Roma. His 7 years at the club. That's the moment that we will look back on when we think of Rick Karsdorp, unfortunately. The way we look back on Bruno Perez and his magic touch versus Shakhtar Donetsk, which made possible the Champions League semifinal to happen later on. What we can think of when we think of Rick Karsdorp is nothing but that pass that puts a puts a mark on our Europa League endeavors this year. The whole final month of last chance must-win games were a special source of pain. Yeah. Let's see. What place do Atalanta need to finish for us to get Champions League fifth? Who would your realistic expectations be for wingers next season, guys? Tom, that's a good question, but I just don't. I do not think there are realistic expectations. I think we still have plenty to find out because with somebody like Ghisolfi coming in, and with the way Roma are trying to put Ghisolfi in a position where he can actually do what he's being asked to do. I doubt this will be the case of, when Monchi joined Roma, everybody expected him to have this very elaborate scouting network the way he had at Sevilla. That never happened. I think that Roma are trying to put Ghisolfi in a position to succeed. So I would not even be able to give you the names because I'm looking at here and what we're reporting on, and it's Filip Kostic. I do not know if that's the case. I do not know if Roma want a balance between youngsters and veterans. I do not know if Roma want players that are fast or technical, or does that matter? Or do they want also some bullies? I mean, it's, with Mourinho, you had a guy like Nemanja Matic, and it made sense. If you think about what De Rossi is asking for right now, you don't really know what's going on. You don't know if a profile akin to Gini Wijnaldum would be something that Roma would be after. I highly doubt that. I think the whole philosophy with De Rossi coming in has changed. I think that the Ghisolfi is the prime example of this philosophy changing. I think the intention on the club's part to slash the wage bill is also a manifestation of this change. So it's very difficult to predict at this moment in time what Roma can and cannot do and what they will and will not do. When it comes to names, I mean. I'm getting the feeling that Daniele De Rossi being set up to fail big next season. Just my opinion, Warren. That's extremely pessimistic. Why would you ever think about that? It's May, guys. Don't be so negative all of a sudden. I understand it's intrinsic to the nature of a Roma fan who's always, ready for disappointment. But guys, we're the season is out of our hands now. We are sixth. That's guaranteed. We are guaranteed Europa League football. We are guaranteed to have a sporting director that's done really well in France, bringing Lens its first Champions League qualification in over 20 years. A sporting director that helped build a really impressive Nice side along with Farioli, who is now departing and going to Ajax. So we have a young manager who's shown really promising signs. I do not see how that is setting up someone to fail. I actually see Roma doing the contrary. I think the Friedkins are really nursing Daniele De Rossi, and Daniele De Rossi himself has said it. He feels basically in a cocoon, along with the support of Lina Suluku, who's the CEO, and also, as I mentioned earlier on the live stream, is also overseeing the sporting area, and the Friedkins providing all kinds of support. Ryan Friedkin is constantly at the training grounds. Ryan Friedkin is constantly involved in negotiations of all sorts. So I really do not think that this could potentially happen. Now, do things work out or whether they don't work out, that's a whole different matter. But there is no such thing as setting somebody up to failure. Not Daniele De Rossi. The Friedkins are the first ones to know how much this guy means to Roma. Otherwise, they would not have appointed him in the first place. Thoughts on Pinto going to Bournemouth? I think he could do well. I honestly think Pinto could do really well in the Premier League. It will be nice to and interesting to see him work with a different manager as opposed to Jose Mourinho. And that's not slacking Jose Mourinho. It just means that given Roma's situation financially and given the kind of manager that Mourinho is, it was a very challenging task for Pinto to work on both fronts. Work on satisfying Mourinho's demands and satisfying Roma's needs. So I do think that in a different context, he could do really well. The problem with Aouar is that technically he's fantastic, but tactically he's hopeless. He floats around the pitch, not sure what to do. That's mental. That's mental. It's mental. It's mental. The fact that he floats around the pitch and that it never really have a feeling that he's in the game. It's all mental. And I do think that if there is hope for him, it's in completing preseason with De Rossi, having De Rossi actually work with him closely. Otherwise, it's best for everybody to part ways. I live in Aberdeen and I'm good friends with some of the Aberdeen FC board. And I know that we have been scouting Scotland under 21 star Connor Barron, as has Sartori for Bologna also. Wow, thanks so much. That's interesting. And it's also interesting and funny to have a Roma fan from Aberdeen join in the live stream. I studied in Aberdeen sociology for 2 years. Did not work out the way I wanted to, but I did go to Pittodrie Stadium once. A lot of rain. Best moments, last minute win against Udinese after Ndika's frightening health scare. Absolutely, that was definitely a highlight. Perhaps the last really encouraging moment of the season, in my opinion. And finally, winning a derby. Worst was the way we failed in Leverkusen after giving us all hope. Yes, that's I think a perfect depiction. That's the summary, guys. Your comments, the fact that we can see exactly these very high highs and very low lows, just are a perfect depiction of what being a Roma fan during an entire season means. And this Roma team this season provided us with a lot of these contrasting moments, contrasting feelings. A crazy season comes to an end as Roma on Sunday they play against Empoli, and we will have to see what the others do. It's once again out of our hands now, so we have to put our hope in the likes of Juve and the likes of Bologna and the likes of Torino and hope for the best. Final questions, guys, and we are ready to close this live stream. Do you think Dybala is among Daniele De Rossi's untouchables? I hope so, but I don't think he is. I do think that De Rossi realizes the kind of quality that Dybala brings to the table. It's unmistakable. The team without Dybala has collected an average of 1.27 points per game. So that's all you need to know about how Roma have struggled without Dybala in their starting lineup. But does that mean that he's untouchable? I think that's a whole different discussion. That's a discussion that Roma will also hold internally, because Dybala's agent is a problematic one. George Antoun is a guy who is always ready to listen to any offers. And so we will have to see what happens next. Any updates on Rafa Silva? No, I think that's a name that has been mentioned a couple of weeks ago. Nothing really has happened. is a pretty big time free agent. I do not think that Roma would be able to draw someone of that caliber at this point in time if they miss out on Champions League. The best striker option by a long shot is Kamaka. I'm confused though. Do we negotiate with West Ham or Atalanta if we can pull it off? I've seen both. No, it's he belongs to Atalanta. Atalanta are not gonna let him walk. It's not gonna happen. uh, it's not gonna happen by a long shot, especially after the season he's had, and given that he's off to the Euros, most likely going to start for Italy. It's not happening. Juan Manuel Iturbe starting right winger is being linked. Yes, it's a wonderful reality that I would like to relive, the one where Iturbe is still a promising player. All thoughts to Iturbe. Guys, thank you so much for joining me on this live stream. It's been very entertaining. I hope that we've been able to have a fruitful discussion ahead of this final match of the season. I hope that you are all still sane and healthy mentally because it's been long. It's been a long season. It's been difficult, but I wanted to thank everybody. Last question: Baldanzi starter next year. I think that's the that's the goal. With De Rossi at the helm, that's the goal of having Baldanzi play a more prominent role. I wanted to thank, in John's name, everybody for the support this season, because this is probably the last time we see each other on this live stream prior to Sunday's game, and so as part of the Roma Press team, which is just John and me, I wanted to thank everybody on John's behalf as well for the continuous support. Really, it's been huge. This season was the first time that we launched this YouTube channel. We've had a great support from everybody. Everybody who's been tuning into the live stream. Everybody has been enjoying the video podcasts on this channel, so that's been huge. We also want to bring in more content to this channel. That's something that we will be working on this summer with John. We want to roll out some new content, some new videos. We want to also update the website a little bit, so keep an eye out on that. If you like what we do at Roma Press, it always means a lot to have more patrons by going to patreon.com/Roma Press. The link is below in the description box. You can really help us a lot in the long run, and it makes a difference, and you can get a lot of cool benefits. So patreon.com/Roma Press. As always, guys, thank you so much for the support. We'll see each other soon after Roma play against Empoli. The season comes to an end, and who knows if we will be in the Champions League next season. So until next time, guys, Forza Roma as always. Thank you.